Hello everyone, lovely to see you. Today, this is a shorty, but it's a goodie, Irish books, which of course you all know I have a big thing for. In a sense, you'll be getting a little potted history of Ireland from the 1970s onwards, but you might learn something. I definitely learned something. So first up today, we have Audrey Magee's The Colony, and this comes to us from Faber. This is set in the 1970s. We have an island, and it's a small island. And one day a painter called Mr. Lloyd comes over to the island and he wants to paint. And the islanders rent him out a room and all is very good and cosy. And then a little bit later, a Frenchman comes called Monsieur Masson. And Mr. Masson is... he has been coming for several summers. This is over the period of a summer. Coming for several summers, and he's very interested in the preservation of the Irish language, is doing a research project which he thinks will lead to great fame and perhaps not fortune in the academic world. But and you feel that kind of genuine interest in preserving, if you like, the old ways of Ireland. On this island, we're particularly focused on one family, and there are three generations of women. You've got Mrs. O'Flynn and Mrs. O'Neill and her daughter Mairead, who we don't have a married name for. Mairead is a widow. Her husband Liam, they're all fishermen, and her son James. So he died in drowning, and her son James is, a young teenager, and he's due to go out on the boats as well. But when he sees Mr. Lloyd, this young James, with his gorgeous, oh goodness, Magee does this so well, with his lovely inquiring mind and his kind of nonchalant, yet intense interest in what Mr. Lloyd is doing, he realises he wants to be a painter. And Lloyd goes along with this a little bit. Lloyd and Masson don't hit it off because Lloyd is sort of saying, move with the times, if he wants to leave. If it's really focusing on whether James wants to stay on that island or leave and have a career. And this whole story is punctuated by broadcasts of events of assassinations carried out by both the RUC and the IRA, and how this outer world and inner world conflict, and how the future and the past conflict. It is the most gorgeously written book. There's a lot of wisdom, a lot of subtlety, there's a lot of level, metaphor, allegory, but there's a huge joy to be got from the dialogue with little expressions that Magee and turns of phrase. It's written with I think with a kind of savvy feel for the Irish humour, but yet that's a tenacity for, who are these people who come onto Ireland and tell us how they think we should live? And obviously you feel that something's going to happen in this period. This two men is going to build what's going to happen at the end. I will leave you to read it and find out, but I'm telling you, it is so well worth the read. So have a huge amount of fun with that one, like I did. Again, Audrey Magee, The Colony. Now, the second one up has been built as a debut cracker. It's kind of making waves already. It's called Trespasses, and it's by Louise Kennedy. It's her debut novel. Now, she has written a collection of short stories called The End of the World is a Cul-de-sac. And they're something to behold and to read and to digest. Now, the book is the same. She loses nothing by long form. I mean, this novel is absolutely liltingly graceful and wonderful. Although, again, it's set in that 1970s where we're in the Troubles in Northern Ireland. We're in this area of conflict. And we are dealing, or I think that one of the things Kennedy is interested in is the idea of sides and how certain situations or certain, who you marry, who you align your sympathies with, or who you might help on a given day will make you straddle some of those borders, and how well you may or may not come out of a said situation. It's written, I think, there are little resonances. I mean, she's her own voice, so it's very hard to say she's a bit like this or a bit like that. She's got a very different voice from Magee, who's punchier and sort of shorter brush strokes, if you like. This is a little more lilting. They're longer, more fluid sort of sentences. She reminds me of a 1950s writer, Kate O'Brien, who specialised in this mother-daughter relationship, which is quite a strong element of this book, and in sort of the falling in love with the wrong person because you're naive and young, and probably romantic. So to be romantic in those times, I think, is very interesting. How you could be romantic in the times of enormous, constant tension and never knowing, as a Catholic or as a Protestant, never knowing what was going to happen next and who would be accused of what, is fabulous. This young girl, Cushla, primary school teacher. She lives with her alcoholic mother, and that relationship, the tensions in there are very interesting. And she works at the primary school, but she helps her brother out in his pub. And the pub serves mostly Protestants, but not exclusively. And one day, an older man, Michael Agnew, comes in, and he's a lawyer, a barrister. And they notice each other, and things develop from there. It has every reason to be billed as one of those debut novels to look out for. She deals with everything, with, why do we have those divisions? There's a young boy in Cushla's class called Davy who, and for various reasons, actually is housed in a mostly Protestant area, so that kind of animosity. His dad gets fiercely beaten up. There's an older brother who gets involved, and the whole thing kind of goes to pot. And she's fascinated by this young fellow, but I suppose his resilience, his cheeky, sort of, little gurrier attitude is just so beautifully captured. It's an absolute gem, another absolute gem, because I think all of these three books are fantastic in their own way. And that one comes to us from Bloomsbury. Don't walk past it, I'm telling you. Last one up, Claire Keegan, Small Things Like These. And again, this one is from Faber. I am asking you to have a look at that masterpiece of a cover from Bruegel. And let me tell you, the book is in and of itself a masterpiece. It's a short book. It's 110 or 12 pages. And how Keegan packed quite so much into those 10 or 12 pages is a miracle in its own right. We are in 1985, and so this is when there was economic strife in Ireland. And Keegan centres her story around Bill Furlong, who runs a timber, coal, turf yard. And we're in Christmas, so we have that very cocooned, again, we've got cocoons again, like from Magee, we've got this cocooned sort of feel of a small town, and that kind of the weather closing in, the evenings closing in. So there's kind of a more intense focus on what people are doing in the village. There's that small town feel, everyone knows everyone. And this Bill has been looking at his life. He himself had been brought up by a single mum, but had been allowed, his mum had worked up at the big house, if you like, and she'd been allowed to keep him and have her baby and have him brought up there, which is the counterpoint to the fact that at the outsides or on the up the hill, there's this wonderful convent, or at least it's sort of pride and glory of the town, and the nuns run a laundry. And if you know your Irish history, you'll know that whenever we talk of nuns and laundry, unhappily, we are talking about a lot of that tragic narrative of single mothers who are cast out from their homes, and they have their babies with the nuns, and then babies are placed in adoption homes, or they're farmed out to wealthy Americans. All of this was about church control and the culture in Ireland that existed, where the church basically decided everything, and you sided with the church, or were you, or weren't you in any way, by knowing this, complicit in what the church did? So Bill goes up to the convent one day, and he's delivering his coal, and he opens the coal shed, and there's a young one in there who's not really in her right mind. And what does that do? So calling this Small Things Like These, I thought was fascinating, because Bill looks at his life, and he looks at, he's got a wife and 5 beautiful children who are almost too good to be true. And that's an essential part of our narrative, because they'll be going to the convent to be schooled, and they already have music lessons, and it's the ideal life. And they would give anything to preserve that and to give those girls the best start in life. And we're going to be looking at, how do you do that when you've got those young ones who've, more often than not, through no fault of their own, got themselves in trouble, got themselves pregnant, and then how were they treated by the nuns? But it's about more than that. It's not bleak in that way, because Keegan is looking at bill. We look at the small gestures in life, the things that are important, how his children, even his children, would be aware of the cost of things or the effort they had to make to keep their family safe and contained. And it's about the other small things, which may be a sharp word, or looking at someone askance, or a reminder of your place. Fabulous, fabulous, fabulous. I suppose there isn't a word, I think people have, it's been reviewed and people said there's not a word out of place, and you really feel that every single sentence does huge work, and gives us huge joy. It's one I'm going to leap straight back into and read all over again, because it's got that those layers. All of these three, as I have said, and I will bang on about them if you come into me, and I will, tell you anything you want to know about them if you need to know more. But any of those would be an absolutely wonderful Mother's Day gift. So think about that if you're coming in to see me, or wherever you are. If you come across these wonderful Irish writers, don't go past them, because they're worth every minute of your time. Okay, well, I will see you for another round of books quite soon. I hope you enjoyed this little video review. Bye.